This episode is brought to you by Core, the brand new non-custodial wallet that offers a seamless and secure experience on Avalanche. You'll hear more about Core later in the show. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Empire. We got the Roundup. Santi is traveling, so you've got me and you've got two of Blockworks Research's analysts. We've got Westie and we've got pibblez. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Man, you guys are going to have to bring more energy than that. It's a Friday. People are trying to figure out what's going on this week. There's a lot of news. Pibblez, before we hit record, right when I jumped on, I heard the tail end of you saying, who the fuck is buying Ethereum right now? So I got to that's where we're starting here. It's not news of the week, but I got to get your take. Why is that the question that you're asking, Westie?
Yeah, I mean, FOMC minutes come out and 20 minutes, and then as soon as 130 hit, if you're looking at FTX, someone just bid Ethereum up $30-$40. It's time to gamble, I guess.
So you are not buying ETH at this point?
Oh no, I'm completely flat because it's going to whipsaw plus 10%, minus 10% in about 10 minutes.
Nice. Westie, what about you? How are you feeling about ETH post-merge?
I pretty much agree with what Spencer said. I think there's going to be a lot of volatility this week, given FOMC, given Putin's speech. But I do, obviously, in a post-merge environment, love the e-supply narrative. The question is, just like Bitcoin halvings, it kind of takes a while for the price to sort of react to those supply shocks. But I do feel pretty good about ETH over the next 6 to 12 months for sure.
Nice. All right, guys, let's get into some of the news. I think Wintermute is probably, here are a couple of the things I want to talk about. Wintermute hack, Arbitrum vulnerability, the stablecoin bill, Nasdaq. Maybe we get into Rari, the hack payment from Rari, and that payback, maybe. Maybe talk about some other things, but I think let's focus on Wintermute first. So here's the TLDR if you guys weren't paying attention this week, probably the biggest news of the week. Wintermute was hacked for $160 million due to this brute force vulnerability in their Vanity / custom address, whatever you want to call it. Wintermute is still solvent. Looks like they've got over $300 million in equity. Can you get into the details here? Just break down kind of what happened with this hack.
Yeah, so a long time ago, Wintermute seeded a wallet address that had 7 zeros at the beginning of it. They did this with the profanity tool, which how Westie puts it is it's basically getting a custom license plate. So if you want a certain address, you can get it. And how that happens is you see the profanity tool will let you pick one seed phrase from I don't know, however many billion possible options, and then it slowly iterates and loops through each digit until you get the address that you want. So Wintermute specifically wanted one with a bunch of zeros at the beginning because something with how bytecode is processed, it gives you slightly cheaper transaction fees on Ethereum. So before Wintermute actually got hacked, it looks like 1inch put out a blog post about a week ago disclosing a vulnerability and how easy it is for someone to kind of reverse engineer and loop through to get the private key for any profanity generated address. Wintermute acted accordingly and they tried to switch their addresses out, but I think they fat fingered something. There was a human error and they accidentally blacklisted a router address. And before they could or I guess they had thought they had gotten it fixed, and then someone took the funds, and then they immediately took I think 115 mil, threw it into the 3 pool on Curve, because if you're holding USDC, Circle can, they can blacklist your USDC. But if you throw it in here with everyone else's liquidity, I mean, that's a way bigger task of blacklisting the entire Curve pool and getting sanctions against that. So that immediately shielded them a good bit, and then they just have this treasure trove of tokens sitting on chain. Who the hell knows how they're going to get it off, but we'll see.
Yeah, and for context here, for folks who don't know Wintermute, Wintermute is one of the best crypto market makers. They're one of the most active D participants. They're an LP in a lot of the big pools. They've got a huge OTC desk. They're registered with the FCA. They're run by deeply crypto natives. Um, so it sounds like basically what happened here, Spencer's. So you've got a vanity address, right? So a vanity address is essentially, I like that what you said, Westie, of like this custom license plate. So for Wintermute, they wanted one with 7 zeros. So theirs was like 0x 000000000, like FE6A, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people call these vanity addresses because it's like you kind of do it to show off a little bit that you've got this like sexy address. What Jenny, their CEO, would say is that there's gas optimizations and you pay a little bit less in gas. The problem with this is that the way you generate this vanity address is you've got this thing called profanity. I guess there's like, it's called profanity, and it's a vanity generator. It was shown that that profanity is vulnerable to these brute force attacks. So that's where like the problem started. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. How did the hacker actually get, how was the 60? I still don't think I'm following exactly how and either Westie or pibblez, I can throw it to either of you guys here. Like, I don't think I get exactly how the 160 million was lost. Like, how does someone just take 160 million here? Was this a user error on Wintermute's side, or did they like brute force attack this? What really happened here? I don't know how technical you guys can get here, but would love to hear it.
Yeah, so I think basically what happened is Wintermute tried to migrate addresses, and they were going to get all their funds off of this vulnerable address. And then in doing so, somebody on their dev team thought they had solved the issue, and they blacklisted like one address that the wallet interacts with, and they meant to blacklist another. So then somebody came through, they look for profanity addresses that have high value in them. And I think basically they just go into the transaction hash on like Etherscan. They see the public key, and then they can see the public nods. And then from there, they were able to kind of just reverse engineer it and like plug and play, kind of like a reverse iteration of how profanity generated the address in the first place. They just kind of like they did that but backwards until they got to the right thing, and they deployed this contract that just transferred all those funds to their wallet, which is labeled as like the Wintermute exploiter on Etherscan right now.
Gotcha. Okay, so these vanity addresses are basically assigned a specific prefix or suffix to the program, and it generates these like thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of addresses until it finds one that matches the specific conditions that the person in this case, or company in this case, Wintermute, wanted. So this hacker basically just brute forced to almost reverse engineer the millions of like basically trying to find that address that matched what they wanted here. It sounds like okay, that's really interesting. Westie, anything and then through that they were able to basically generate the private keys for the users with the vanity address to essentially get in. And once you have the private key with the public key, you can basically just take the funds. So Westie, any what are we missing here? Anything else? Any other takeaways from this Wintermute thing?
Yeah, I guess my question is, we sort of knew that you could brute force these vanity addresses about 9 months ago. So I'm not sure why Wintermute decided like more recently to get away from these vanity addresses. And I do think that we're going to start to see sort of different naming conventions. Like, I don't think we're going to see vanity addresses anymore. I think more people are just going to use ENS domains and subdomains where like Wintermute can just have a wintermute.eth, and then each wallet could have like wallet1.wintermute.eth. So I think just changing naming conventions would be a good idea. And I don't think it's worth the vanity address for just like a small amount of gas efficiency. I think like you're making up insecurity way more using a different naming convention.
Yeah. pibblez, what are your takeaways on this? Like my thoughts when I saw this, I was like, damn, like if Wintermute is getting hacked, like no one is safe here. Because I think when I think of Wintermute, I mean, this is kind of, I saw Rekt put out a thing and it was like at the end of the URL is like Wintermute 2, and you never want to have two things on Rekt. But yeah, it's kind of like, damn, if if this is happening to Wintermute, like it can kind of happen to anyone. But what are your thoughts here, pibblez? What are your takeaways?
Yeah, I just think it goes to show that no one is safe, no matter how safe they think they are. And to just be like super careful and keep everything as simple as you can. when it comes to custody, while at the same time like being secure. And it really sucks to see this happen, especially like they've been grinding for years, and just to see that get erased like that, like we really hope that the hacker actually returns the funds. But it's just a terrible situation all around, and
Yeah.
it makes you wonder, like, how to keep institutional money safe, and like, can they just only rely on centralized exchanges from here on out if you can't even do any DeFi activities?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this more in the Nasdaq section, but I think it really opens the door for like really good custodial solutions, because security is a big problem, and if Wintermute can get exploited, so can anyone. And so I think a lot of these TradFi institutions are going to want to go through some sort of custodial service going
Yeah.
forward.
One of my takeaways was the level of hacker that's coming to the industry is getting the levels of the hackers are getting better. Like this was a professional who did this, right? Like pibblez, you explained how this kind of happened, like reverse engineering. I saw one estimation. So Wintermute's address had 7 leading zeros, like 0x, and then 7 zeros. I saw this estimation. You could brute force that in 50 days using 1,000 GPUs, right? So like I don't think the three of us have like 1,000 GPUs and 50 days of time lying around. This was a pro who did this. So it's like not only are the custodians getting better, security's getting better, funds are getting better, but also the hackers are getting better too. That was another one of my thoughts. So now that Tornado Cash isn't like as popular, I'd say, obviously, considering what happened a couple of weeks ago. So the funds got stolen. Where did the funds go? Did it go into, I think I saw it went into the Curve's like 3 CRV, 3 Curve liquidity pool.
Yeah, so a good portion of the funds went there, the funds that they wanted to keep in stables. Um, or I guess if it just happened to fit in that pool, it was fine. And then they kept all the other tokens, like they haven't dumped them or anything. They're just kind of sitting in that address. You can go on Etherscan or DBank and just look at it and speculate, when are they going to dump that? What's going to happen?
Yeah. How many assets are in that pool? It's probably commingled with like $1 billion in the pool or somewhere around there, maybe a couple 100 million.
Yeah, for the curve pool, like I think there's like close to 1 billion just in there.
And does this make it, now that it's in the pool, does that make it harder for someone like a Circle to come around and like blacklist the tokens? Essentially, is that why you put it into the pool?
Yeah, because if Circle's trying to come in and be like, we're gonna freeze this, like you can't specifically just freeze all 3 tokens in that pool. You can only control the USDC. And if you were to freeze that contract for the pool, I mean, you're also freezing a ton of other people's money who were not involved in this at all.
Any other thoughts on any other takeaways? Anything else you guys want to talk about on Wintermute here?
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting is somebody deployed a Wintermute Inu token on Uniswap, like right after the hack happened. So someone like spoofed the address. So they made it look like the contract was deployed by the exploiter. So a bunch of people started aping in, and people were throwing like thousands at a time into this. They're like, they're going to distribute the wealth. And actually, what happened is every time someone bought the token, the tokens that they bought were instantly burned. So it was just another exit mechanism for some random scammer who just was around to exploit this.
Wait, let me get this right. So a scammer spoofed a contract deployment for a Wintermute Inu token. So like WINU, that
Yeah.
immediately burned the tokens of anybody who bought that token. So if I went and bought the Wintermute Inu token, the Wintermute Inu tokens that I bought would just burn. So
Yeah.
I was basically just handing money over for free to someone.
Yep. And a lot of people
Yes.
did
Okay.
it.
Did you do it?
No, I saw some people who did it. RIP.
RIP. Basically lighting money on fire. Awesome. That's good. That's a good add-on. Westie, anything else to add on to the Wintermute conversation?
Nothing from me.
Nothing for you. All right, cool. Let's move on. Maybe I don't think there's too much to say here. Just an interesting bit of news from the week is that Nasdaq is the second biggest stock exchange operator, I think, in the world, behind the New York Stock Exchange, I would assume. announced that they're planning to launch a crypto custody service for institutional investors, starting with both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Nasdaq hired, I think it was the former Gemini Prime head, this person, Ira Auerbach, to lead the new division. It's going to be called Nasdaq Digital Assets. Really interesting. I mean, this puts them in direct competition with Coinbase, Gemini, BitGo. Other traditional players like BNY Mellon and State Street are coming out with custody solutions at the end of the year, puts them in competition with them. I think this is a good move, right? Like, no one cares about on and off ramps in a bear market. Everyone's like when I immediately saw the news, I was like, so what? Like, this doesn't just another player kind of getting into custody. But what you forget is, like, in bull markets, when everyone wants to get in, the on and off ramps become really important players, right? And we've seen over like almost probably $2 billion in crypto hacks this year already. So, like, safe custody of funds is just more important than ever. So what do you guys think of this news?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obviously a positive sign for the industry, having the second biggest exchange in TradFi basically saying we're going after crypto. I think it's definitely a good thing. And I think basically on the Wintermute situation, I think there's huge demand in TradFi to have really robust custody solutions, and having Nasdaq as that sort of household name sort of gives them a head start with a lot of these TradFi institutions that want to get into crypto. So I think it's a good thing. It's going to spark some competition. Yeah, I think it's pretty positive overall.
Pibblez, any controversial takes here?
No, I think it's overall net positive. I'm glad that there's appetite and demand from customers to even do this. And I'm glad it's just Bitcoin and Ethereum and it's not, all these random old assets that you see on like the Bloomberg tab, like of just stuff that nobody is buying.
True. Yeah, true. I mean, I think it's just important not to lose sight of like how crazy some of the things that have been built. Just some of the announcements in like the last month or two, right? BlackRock launching a Bitcoin fund, or like direct exposure or integration with Coinbase Institutional. Nasdaq's launching crypto custody. Fidelity is offering Bitcoin to their 34 million clients. Citadel, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab are partnering to build a crypto exchange, which my buddy is actually in final round interviews, and I was like, "Is that real? Like, they're really doing it?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're really going full force with it." So very interesting. Let's move past it. Let's get into some other interesting things. We're going stablecoin bill. U.S. lawmakers are reportedly drafting a House stablecoin bill that's going to place a 2-year ban on, I think they called it endogenously collateralized stablecoins, aka Algo stables. Westie, what was your gut reaction to this when you saw this? I know you were the Terra analyst when you first joined here. So I think you've got a soft spot in your heart for the Algo stables. What was your thought when you saw this?
Yeah, I mean, my first gut reaction was I kind of figured this was coming, given sort of the wipeout of Terra. That was what, like $40 billion in value, like wiped out. So you kind of figured something like this was coming. I just sort of have a lot of questions around specifically how this is, like, the language in the bill itself. Like, we got a lot of articles basically explaining that this thing is coming, but each of the articles had different sort of languages for how an algo stable is sort of defined. And so I was sort of confused in whether this applied to a lot of the over collateralized stables we see. So, for example, you have synthetics, so their SUSD is backed only by SNX, and so it's not necessarily an Algo stablecoin, but by some of the definitions I was seeing, that could technically be construed as an Algo stable because it's basically backed by an asset by the same creator. And so I just love to see like the specific language, what it applies to, and also like I'm not sure if like a bill like this will even pass. Like obviously it's something that needs to get voted on, go through the proper steps, and so like obviously people might be freaking out now, but it could just be a dud in the future.
I think it's important to remember that there's a 5-step process to these bills, right? You introduce it, you pass the Senate, you pass the House, you go to the president, and then you become law. This bill is in phase 0, right? It hasn't even been officially introduced yet. It's extremely new, so it probably isn't coming anytime soon. I think maybe just a little more clarity around the bill. Like, here are a couple things I read. Issuing a stablecoin without approval from appropriate regulators could be punishable by up to 5 years in prison, and you'd get hit with a $1 million fine. Does this mean that, like, what are the current implications then for what are the implications for the current maybe things that look like algo stables, right? Does this mean that Frax must have a collateralization ratio of 100%? Does this mean that Aave stablecoin can't now use Aave as collateral? Does this mean that CRV USD can't use CRV as collateral? Like, what are the implications for existing stables?
Yeah, so from what I understand, that's exactly what the case is. Like stuff has to be fully collateralized. Um, I also saw something about that existing stablecoin projects would have a 2-year grace period to become compliant. So it's not completely shafting them, and that's like kind of a sensible stipulation to add to it. But I also think like, so if something's collateralized by external assets that aren't from the same dev team, then allegedly it's okay from what I saw. And if that's the case, then even if you had something like Terra pop up, okay, it was you had UST collateralized by Luna. So what if they just created a separate entity that's not quote the same dev and they just deployed the same mechanism, but it's a different project? Like if people want to hurt people, they're going to find ways around it. This is just kind of like something to appease headlines and regulators, I guess.
Hmm. Westy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. Um, Although I think like having a stablecoin like that will just take would obviously be pretty hard to create and hard to market as having like two separate projects that sort of coexist. So I think it's going to
Yeah.
be a lot tougher to create that kind of stablecoin project, but I could definitely see some sort of workarounds. Um, and I also like the questions I have, like I see sort of two sides of this debate where like sort of questioning, is this a good thing? Where like the US is kind of stifling innovation and like reducing the strength of the dollar because by like not allowing stable coins to experiment, you're basically not allowing the dollar to be like the prevalent currency within DeFi. But at the same time, maybe that's what they want, is they sort of only want centralized issuers that sort of have a constant demand on the buying U.S. treasuries. And so I'd just love to know like the why behind. Is there like a deeper meaning behind this bill, or is it simply they saw the headlines from Terra and they thought they had to do something?
Yeah. I also wonder what the implications are for someone like a maker, right? Maker is collateralized with exogenous assets like mostly USDC and ETH. But I do wonder if this means that someone like a maker, like the protocol, I just makes me think that they might, like the US regulators might, not probably anytime soon, but like in the future, make someone like the maker protocol register with US regulators to continue serving users in the US. Uh, and then that's when you have a big decision to make, right? Which is like something that we talk a lot about on the podcast, which is, are you basically leaning in and you're trying to increase the TAM and of your protocol and like get as big as humanly possible, probably by registering with the US regulators and like complying with the rules? Or are you basically saying like, we're keeping the ethos of our protocol and like, we're going to not really register and like do kind of the things that you want us to do and just like decentralize as quickly and as much as possible. So I think that's, I don't know, that's maybe one of the second order implications that this made me think about.
Yeah, I know this is something that Rune talked about with the sort of end game plan, and that like basically Maker had to pick two paths, either being sort of like a neobank, someone that goes along this route where they sort of have to talk to the regulators in order to exist, or go fully decentralized. And so if something like you said were to exist, where basically in order to have a stable coin that's pegged to the US dollar, you have to go this route, like it's pretty tough to be in Maker's position. Like, what do you decide there?
Pibblez, you worried about this one?
I'll be keeping an eye on it, but in the meantime, I will not be playing with any decentralized stablecoin governance tokens, at least. I
Yeah.
think this is going to add a lot of weight to price appreciation of anything from like frac shares to Maker to even like Liquidity. like I'll just stay away from them, because even if like technically it's fine, it's not implemented, like people are still going to associate this negative correlation.
I think so. Jake Chervinsky said this well on Twitter. He said, and Jake, if you guys don't know Jake, we just did an episode with him a couple of weeks ago. He's the head of policy at the Blockchain Association. He's like, it's hard to overstate the damage that Terra did to the perception of crypto in DC, right? Many policymakers already dislike the notion of this permissionless, like, digital marketplace and wanted to put all of crypto into this well-sealed box. Terra gave them the, as he says, and I would agree with him, the unjust cause, but it's still a just, in their minds, it's a just cause to push that forward. So I think it's a shame that this is happening. I do think it's going to have an adverse react. What's actually going to happen is you're going to see a race to create a bunch of algo stables in the next year or two before this bill is actually introduced. In some of the Telegram chats that I'm in, with some folks who are working on some of this stuff, they're like, yeah, this is just going to push us to move faster, and race to build our stuff, which is just an interesting adverse reaction.
All right, folks, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Avalanche and Ava Labs. They have just dropped a new crypto wallet called Core. You're going to be hearing a lot about it over the coming months. You can now be one of the first to try it out. Here's the reason I'm excited to partner with them on Empire. Right now, crypto wallets and browser extensions, they feel clunky, they feel non-intuitive. That's why Ava Labs built Core. It's a free, non-custodial browser extension that gives Avalanche users a seamless and secure Web3 experience across the entire Avalanche ecosystem. Here are a few reasons to try Core. Here's what I'm experimenting with. Number one, Core has intuitive dashboards with a unified display for all of your NFT collections, all your crypto assets. You can execute asset swaps directly inside the wallet. It's a really nice experience. Maybe you want to earn yield or borrow against your Bitcoin, but you don't want to do it on one of those C5 platforms right now. Core's native bridging functionality makes it really easy to bridge your Bitcoin to Avalanche's robust DeFi ecosystem. Last but not least, Core makes on-ramping super easy. You can convert dollars to crypto right now using the MoonPay integration. Just takes a few clicks. Download Core today using the link in the show notes. It's really, really nice. If you are interested in the Avalanche ecosystem at all, you have to be using Core. Download Core using the link below. Now, let's get back to the show.
Westie, take us home with the Arbitrum bug. What's going on? What happened on Monday?
Yeah, I'm not too in the weeds in the details, but essentially there was a bug on the new Arbitrum Nitro chain, which allowed attackers to steal all incoming ETH deposits, basically going from the Ethereum L1 to the L2. And there's a guy named Riptide who wrote a Medium article detailing how he was able to wipe these storage slots and well-intentioned gas optimizations in order to essentially stop ETH deposits and sort of take them for himself. And so he sort of notified Arbitrum Nitro and got, I think it was a 400 ETH as a bug bounty. And one interesting thing he said in the article that I read was basically that he is 100% certain anytime a developer deploys a new contract to mainnet, that he's 100% certain there will be some sort of problem that he can find and exploit, and sort of claim a bounty on, which is pretty scary to read, but at the same time, it's something you need to be aware of as a contract developer, that anytime you deploy a contract to mainnet, there will be dozens of some of the best developers basically trying to find any cracks that they can. Security, once again, is super important. Definitely get your audits, but it's obviously something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Pibblez, what happened here? What do you think about this one?
I think the first takeaway is learn to code and get these bug bounties, because that's insane money. Imagine just hitting.
I thought they weren't going to even pay. They weren't even going to pay Riptide the full bounty. That's what I heard. Which that's what I saw on Twitter, but which I'd be pissed off about.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the specifics of that. I'm just thinking man, if I knew Solidity and I could hit one bounty a month, I'd be retired within a year or two.
No longer be working at Blockworks Research, huh?
Nah, I'm here for life. But I will say, it does suck to just see another bug like this happen, and obviously the future is cross-chain or interchain, and you just need a safe way to like move funds around or interact with funds on different networks. And like we have so many VC funded projects. We have like Synapse, we have Stargate, we have Wormhole. They're all working towards this, but like you see something like this with the biggest roll up Arbitrum, it's like, when is anything going to be safe ever? And then like also, like, sure, I'm sure they had audits for the code, but like even an audit, like it's not like a 100% like gold seal that everything's going to be okay with your project or your code. I mean, I sat in a DeFi project for a few months as a trade, and then they had like 2 or 3 audits from like really good auditing firms, and at some point they realized that it was calculating interest wrong, so the protocol was actually running at a deficit and was just hemorrhaging money. So I got wrecked on that. But like, so even audits all the way don't work.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like there's so much that has to go right now. And there's so much that kind of currently is going wrong. It's like L2 security is touted as one of like the most secure scaling solutions, right? But then you get into like bridges. What was this? This was it was sitting on the bridge, I think it was. It was like it would allow the attacker, I think Westie, you just said this, but allow an attacker to steal all the incoming ETH deposits from the L1 to the L2 bridge. So anyways, I feel like this is another example of like just bridges needing to be fixed, and like just how early we are to the bridging space. I also think I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. This is total FUD probably, but Riptide posted, he's like, what, or he or she, would Arbitrum have been insolvent if the $470 million deposit a few days ago was stolen and they had to reimburse? And 74% of people said yes, they would have been insolvent. Now I have no idea. Like that's probably total FUD, but I don't know if you guys have insights into that, but like just the fact that one hack could take down some big folks is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. And then the people who have equity in a company like Arbitrum are the ones that are helping prop up the entire crypto industry. So if some of their projects get hacked and they lose a lot of value in their seed investments, then like who's left for crypto at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if like, are we going to see Ethereum with actual sharding live, or are we going to see an actual secure bridge? Like, which one comes first?
What do you think?
I have no idea at this point. Like, hopefully one of the bridges just completely locks it down and like we go exploit free for, you know, the rest of eternity. But I think complete safety will probably happen just when Ethereum shards and we don't have to pay crazy gas fees all the time.
Yeah. Westy, what do you think?
I think this kind of shows the ingenuity of IBC on Cosmos, like the fact that there hasn't been any major exploits there. I think, and I know they're developing ways to connect IBC to Ethereum and to Solana currently, and so I think that could be a pretty good bridging solution. But at the same time, I agree. Like all it takes is one hack on a bridge, and that's like a lot of value that you're taking. And so it's sort of hard to align incentives, like because there's a lot of value in these bridges. Like how much is a bug bounty worth it to these hackers? So I think managing incentives is a tough thing to do. It's something you need to do.
Yeah. Anything else on Arbitrum?
A broader thing with just security is like maybe we do see a ton of huge dollar amount exploits on anything that's ran on Solidity, but maybe like we haven't seen a ton of Cosmos exploits because that language isn't as widely known. I think they use like WASM. So if that starts getting more value on the chain, then it's going to attract all the hackers to come out there, learn a new language, and then get ready to go to town on exploits there.
You guys ready for Atom 2.0?
Yeah, let's see it.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think is coming?
And I'm excited to hear about what the EIP 1559, like looking like a joke, means. Like I'd love to know what's the deflationary pressure on that. I'd love to know, like, MEV. I know they said they're probably including some sort of proposer builder separation, but what does that look like? Like, I'm definitely super excited for like the hub actually having some value. But I wonder what that value looks like.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. All right, last thing, Rari Fei. In August, we talked about how Fei Labs proposed to dissolve the protocol. The proposal had Tribe DAO paying out basically all of its assets to token holders, except for about 14 million that was set aside to compensate users who were victimized in a previous $80 million exploit. The catch, and the reason people were pissed, is that not all users were going to be made whole. Basically, Fei was only going to pay out 2% of the 13 million that Frax lost. Olympus DAO lost like 9 million. They were going to pay out 3% of that. They were going to pay out like 19% of Balancer's losses, 27% of VesperFi's losses. So some people were really pissed, including Sam, the founder of Frax, who called it one of the most egregious DAO and DeFi situations he'd ever seen. Fast forward to this past Monday, Sam, the rest of the community, Olympus, won out with a big new on-chain proposal that that got approved, that paid out all victims in full. So, Westie, what's the interesting thing about this here? Like, when you see this happen, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think so. This is something Joey actually said in his tweet thread, but it was sort of like, in the future, how do we deal with situations like this? Like when protocols have some sort of PCV or some sort of value, and in certain situations, whether they get exploited or like something happens, how do we actually pay out those assets? And he sort of had the idea to enforce this on chain, which I think is pretty interesting. I'm not super technical myself, so I'm not sure how that would actually work in practice, but I think if somehow you could code within smart contracts specifically who gets paid out first in certain situations, I think that could definitely help alleviate in a similar situation in the future. And I'm just excited to see future development in the space and how we sort of tackle this issue going forward.
I mean, it feels like that. It feels like what should exist is what already exists in traditional startups, which is like, let's say there's an acquisition or a bankruptcy. Like, there's a very clear preference stack that shows who gets paid out first, right? Like, you'd have like the debt holders get paid out, then the equity, like it kind of just basically trickles down the stack. That should probably be, and that's basically written in the operating agreement of a company. That should, and honestly, just it's in the legal system too. That should probably get included in like the formation docs. I don't even know what it is, but like in the smart contracts or whatever of these protocols. It's a good point, Westie.
Yeah, I think on-chain enforcement is definitely like the best method going forward. And like people are all about throwing funds at some DAO tooling companies. Like let's see them build something useful like this, so that you're not counting on a bunch of 17-year-olds behind a computer to pay you back your money when something goes wrong. But also, like, I don't know, maybe don't do a DAO treasury swap with a project funded or like completely created by a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah, true. True. So, all right, guys, this is great. Anything else that you guys are looking at this week?
Not really. I'm just trying to see what this interest rate hike looks like and how the markets react to that.
Nice.
And then
I did hear Azuki's raised at a $1.4 billion valuation. So it's total rumor. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so we will see if that actually happened or not. But
yeah, September 23rd, it'll be announced.
Yes, exactly. So cool, guys. All right, this is great. Appreciate you guys coming on. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next week.
Cool.
Thanks for having us.